Okay, I think we're live. Hopefully we're live. Okay. All right, so basically, I know some of y'all can a little bit, so you probably already heard most of this, but I'm gonna go through the basic principles of canning first, like why you do certain things and you don't do other things. So y'all know there's pretty much like 4 different types of canning. So you can do water bath canning, pressure canning, open kettle canning, or steam canning. 2 of those I don't do. The steam canning I don't do just because I don't have any need to do it. Open kettle canning is pretty much only done reasonably for pickles, and there are a couple of reasons for that. It's very difficult to get them crisp, so a lot of people like to do the open kettle method, which basically consists of hot jars, hot food, put it together, put the lid on, turn them upside down and sit on the counter. I don't do that because I don't like the sterility issues that you run into with that. That's just personal preference because of my background. I'm just all about, sterility and things not having bacteria in them. That just makes me nervous. So of course, pickles are less of a risk because they're very, very acidic. So we'll go through that as well. But of the 4 different types of canning, the 2 that I do the most commonly are water bath canning and pressure canning.
Water what?
Water bath.
Bath.
It's water bath. Pretty much, and this is kind of controversial as well, but anything that you can pressure can, you can also water bath can. It's just much longer times, and it just is, you have to have a lot more patience to do it. And it does take a leap of faith because in the United States, we don't approve of that. So if you go to any governmental body, they're going to tell you you can't water bath meats. You actually, in fact, can water bath meats. Most of the countries do it that way because they don't have pressure canners. We're one of the only countries that actually has pressure canners. So most other countries do water bath their meats. It just is a much longer water bath than what you are used to thinking about. So with that said, we'll get off into that in a few minutes. The basic principles, besides the whole water bath meats part, the basic principles are if something has a pH of less than 4.6, and I'll explain what that means in just a minute. A pH of less than 4.6, you can water bath it safely. And it doesn't have to be for a long amount of time. It'll be just whatever the recipe calls for. And once you get to water bathing and you get more comfortable with that, you'll figure out kind of how much time you need and how long it can go. I am gonna get you guys a book, and it's one of my favorite books, and it's actually at church right now on my display table, but it's Amish Canning Cookbook, and I really, really love it. If you're curious and you wanna look at it, go on Amazon. It's called the Amish Canning Cookbook. I think it's cookbook in there, but anyway. That one is really, really good, and that's the one I recommend to people. Most people say go get one of the Ball books. The Ball books are really good for going through the entire step-by-step process. So if you are brand new, straight out of the box, never canned anything, never seen anybody can anything, and you don't know what you're doing and you want to do walk all the way through it, you can go through a Ball book at the very beginning and scare yourself half to death too, because it just seems super scary and overwhelming. I taught myself how to can by going on YouTube and watching videos. My sister bought me my first canner in 2011. It was a pressure canner, 23-quart pressure canner. I still have it. Works amazing. And I got the book, the little manual, and I'm the type of person that reads manuals from cover to cover. So that's exactly what I did. I read the manual from cover to cover, and then I read it again to make sure I understood things. And then I started watching YouTube videos. And what I did is I started with my canner name, which was a Presto 23-quart pressure canner videos. And I started looking on YouTube and started watching people do canning. And that was my basic way of learning how to can. I taught myself that. Well, obviously I've learned a lot since then, and I've made a lot of mistakes, but that's the way it goes. But the good thing is now I can tell you guys all the mistakes I've made and all the wonderful things to avoid. So let me see. With pressure canning, basically the principle is you have to heat your food to 240 degrees. So that is the entire goal of a pressure canner. Okay, it does not matter that it's 240 degrees to us. All we care about is time and pressure. Okay, those 2 things combined, because smarter people than us have put all this knowledge into place and said, okay, in order to reach 240 degrees in this jar and have this much time, killing time for bacteria and viruses, this is the kind of pressure you need, and this is the amount of time you need. Okay, so those two things have come together and given us all of our canning times and our canning pressures. So for a pressure canner, and I will give you guys, I'll pull it out and let you guys look at everything. You can go by two different methods. There is a dial method or just a dial thing. It's a pressure gauge, or you can go by the rocker. Either way, so they're both there. Am I being long-winded already? My husband accuses me of that. You're looking at your watch. Oh, I need to slow down. I'm sorry. I try to ask because I have a lot to say. So okay, sorry about that. So anyway, stop looking at your watch.
No, I was turning my sound off, make sure nothing was.
Well, we all get our text on our watch. So if we look at our watch, it's because we got a text.
Okay.
I'm taking notes. I have mine on the internet. So.
All right. Well, I'm gonna send y'all this video later too. So if you need it, watch back and anything. So anyway, so the pressure canning is the one that I do the most. I don't do a lot of water bathing simply because I don't do your jellies, your jams, your salsas. Those things are all acidic. Okay, they are very, they've got a lot of acid in them. When I say something acidic, you guys know what that means. I know I'm probably making some of this like really super basic, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands. So I mentioned pH a few minutes ago. pH is a little p and a capital H, and that's how much we use hydrochloric acid as the reference, but it doesn't mean anything. It's just a number that we use to arbitrarily assign the acidity to things. So like if you're looking at a lemon is very, very acidic as opposed to an egg, which is not acidic at all. So if you just compare those two things, the lemon you can water bath because the lemon is going to be very acidic and it's going to be safe to water bath, whereas an egg is not safe to water bath in general. You're going to have to, if you're going to do anything with an egg, it's going to be pressure can, although you don't pressure can eggs in general either. So, bad example on my part, sorry about that. So, but basically that's the whole principle. You have to pay attention to how acidic something is. And most things, what I recommend for people is to start out using recipes that are tried and true, the recipes that you find in the books. Now, when I deviate from recipes, like I go off and I can things like gumbo or I can beef stew or things like that, what you do with a combination product like that is you can, for the longest time, ingredient. So in my case, meat takes the longest out of all those ingredients. Sorry, that's my ice maker. Meat takes the longest time out of those ingredients. So if I'm canning something with meat in it, I automatically know that for a quart jar, I've got to can that for 90 minutes. And for our area, it's 10 pounds of pressure, okay? Those are things that you guys will know. It's very easily, after you can a few times, you'll know it. If you don't know it, it's not a big deal. All you gotta do is pull out your little book and go, oh, okay, meat, 90 minutes quart. They're all saying 90 minutes quart, 90 minutes quart, 90 minutes quart. I'll let you know. Your meat's gonna can for 90 minutes for a quart or 75 minutes for a pint. So anything that's got meat in it, that's automatically gonna be what it is. The only thing that ever will go higher than meat is occasionally fish. So if you're canning fresh salmon from Alaska, your times may be higher. I haven't done that because I've heard that it's higher, and I'm pretty much good with meats. So so I haven't done fish. The only thing I've done is shrimp, which requires you doing a brine and all that kind of stuff. That recipe is, by the way, in this book, so you can see what I did with the shrimp. Although the shrimp do fall apart, so I don't recommend it. They don't hold their texture, their shape at all. They fall apart, but they're good for like a bisque type thing. That would be fine for that. So that's basically what the cutoff is. Like if you're trying to figure out what the basic difference is for most people when they're thinking about water bathing something versus pressure canning something, it's basically the pH. How acidic is it? If it's very acidic, we're not worried about certain bacteria growing in it. A super acidic product, your E. coli is not going to grow in it, especially if you processed it. You kill that stuff. It kills really fast. You can kill it really fast by boiling it or by processing it. And then once you put it in the jar and you seal it up, you're going to boil it some more, and it's going to reach a proper temperature that's going to kill that. Botulism is the only bacteria that is extremely, extremely resistant. And I know you guys have heard about that. It is actually it's Clostridium botulinum, but you guys will have heard of botulism. Basically, that's what the sickness is that it causes. So basically, if you have a very, very acidic environment, it cannot grow. So it may be there, but that won't make you sick. What makes you sick is the spores that it puts off. But if it's a very acidic environment, it can't put off spores. So there's no danger. If it's not an acidic environment and you are pressure canning something, we do pressure can something high enough pressure for a long enough time to kill botulism, to kill it. So that's the thing. There may be botulism, like the dead bacteria in there, but it's dead. Anything that's in a canned product, a pressure can product, is dead. We have canned it for long enough and for sufficient amount of time that it is dead. So there is nothing growing live in there. If something starts to grow in there and your lid pops after it's been in the pantry for a while, you know something was growing there, it probably was not actually sealed correctly to begin with. And we're going to go through all those ways, how you can tell if something's sealed and how you can tell it you can't tell, and how you get a false seal and how to prevent those type things. So there's a lot to do with it. It sounds complicated. It's super, super simple. The very first thing I canned was taco soup, and which is crazy because most people they can water the first time. I'm like, why am I going to can water? I'm going to jump off in here and can some taco soup. You know, it didn't seem like any point to can water to me. I want to go big or go home, you know. That's how I felt about it. So I did, and 7 years later, I was still eating taco soup that I had canned. Every once in a while, I pulled some out and I'd try it, and it was good. And I have eaten gumbo that I canned. I think 7 years is about the longest that I've gone. So, but yeah, and it's still very good all those years later. And some people have eaten canned goods, you know, 20, 30, even 40 years later, although I don't recommend that. And it still tasted great. So it's just a matter of preference. I probably would never do meat. That was mostly like, I think some canned berries or something they tried that was like 40 years old. So, you know, there are a lot of things that you can can that long-term are going to be very safe. And 7 to 10 years is a very reasonable estimation. If your stuff is canned correctly, that's a very reasonable estimation for how long you can keep it. And
that girl in me will not let something sit in my house for 7 years.
Which is fine. A lot of people, I have one of those fat girls in me too. Yes, I do. So, but this is a hobby for me, so I really love doing it. So as you guys can tell from my little pantry in there, it's more, a lot of times it's not things like, my husband does not want to eat soup all the time. My kids would eat taco soup every day, but my husband does not. So, you know, I have the taco soup, but it's, you know, I don't eat it all the time, but every once in a while we'll bring a jar out and we'll eat it. And if it's there 7, 10 years from now, I'm fine with that, you know, because you never know when you might need it. You know, there are a lot of things I can that we're not eating all the time, but I have them if we need them. The butter I did when butter was getting really scarce and hard to find, and so now I have all these jars of butter. Well, I haven't used it. I did open one jar. I think one day for some reason, I can't remember, I think I just ran out and I opened a jar and it was perfectly great. So, you know, there are things that at least you know you've got them. I do use, like I can little jars of onions and beef broth, and they taste almost like French onion soup. They're really good. But anyway, I use those, like I was cooking green beans the other day and I didn't have any bacon, so I used a little bacon grease because I have bacon grease over there because I'm country. So I have my bacon grease over there, and I use a little bit of that, and I use those onions in my green beans, which are really good. So the point is, like, you can always can things that you know that you use, seasonings that you know that you use. You can can those things. The one thing I don't do very much of is tomatoes. The one thing that is difficult to judge the pH or the acidity of is tomatoes. People who have been canning tomatoes for years will say, oh, it's perfectly safe. You can water bath it. You can do this. You can do. I've been doing it for 40 years. My family's been doing it for 60 years. None of us have died from it. I want to say to them that if your family has been doing it for 40 years, have they been doing the same version of tomato? Have you been drying your own seeds out and growing your own tomatoes from those seeds, or are you using a hybrid version of them? Because our newer hybrid versions that have come out in the last 20 years or so are less acidic. So they kind of fall somewhere between that 4 and 5 pH, which makes, you know, people who care, makes us all a little nervous about it. So you can buy a cheap pH meter. That's what they're called, off of Amazon if you do a lot of water bath canning or if you want to go that route, because pressure canners are expensive. Now I'm going to show you guys what I use to water bath, and you're going to laugh at me. But it's just my preference. It's very easy, it's very simple, and I'll show you my pressure canners. So I'm gonna pause this for a second so I can get those.
I don't have a pressure cooker can.
Okay, all right, so this is the 23-quart pressure canner. And it is very simple to use, and it does have, now unlike my All-American, which I don't have here right now, but this is the one that's is what I recommend to people starting out because it's probably the most economical. They do have a smaller version of this that you can usually get at Walmart. This one you pretty much have to order offline.
You said it's 23 quart?
This is a 23 quart, Presto 23 quart pressure canner, not cooker, canner. That's very important to make sure you know the difference to it. This is the jiggler, what people call the jiggler. So, and it does have a sealing ring in it. This, they say you're supposed to replace every 6 months. I don't know anybody that replaces them that often. I replaced mine for 7 years, so they're perfectly fine. Unless you're using it every day, you don't need to replace it that often. This is my gumbo pot. And this is what I use for water bathing, dual purpose. Any big pot you have that you can fit a quart jar in it, you can use for water bathing, okay? So basically all you need is a rack that you can set down in here. I actually have a wire rack that I use. This is not so great because it almost touches the bottom all the way through and through, and you want a little more lift than that. But you need a rack in here. Now, prior to getting a rack, I actually used dish towels, and that is completely fine to use too. You can take a dish towel, submerge it down in your water. As long as your jars are not sitting on the bottom of the pot, it's fine. It's no worries. Your jars can touch each other. That is completely fine. It does not matter if they touch each other. Obviously, this pot is only big enough for me to do one layer, and it's kind of hard to get quarts in here. Let me see if I can grab this time. Sorry, it's a choice. Okay, so these are pickled eggs that I would never do in here, but they actually, I've got about this much room to the top of the pot. You are supposed to have about 2 inches of water above that these jars. So it's very difficult. As you can see, I'd be about this far from the top if I did 2 inches of water on that. And you've got to bring it to a full rolling boil and keep it there for your duration of time. So that's when your lid comes in handy if you don't have a tall pot. You keep your lid on there, and then if it starts to get like splashy, kind of crack it a tiny bit like that, okay? But it's very easy to do. Water bathing is awesome. What you do with water bath is you basically put your stuff in your jars, something more acidic usually. Put your jars in there, make sure that they are covered with water, 2 inches above the jar, 1 to 2 inches. But honestly, if you're doing quart jars, you want to go 2 inches because you want that added pressure and weight. 2 inches above. Once you get that going, you're going to turn your heat on high and wait for it to start boiling. Now, I have a gas stove. This is if you have a glass stove, you're going to have a difficult time probably, and it may get a little too heavy for a glass top stove. So that's something that, you know, you have to kind of, I can talk to you about that, about what you could do if you have a glass stove instead of using your stove. But you can still do it. You just have to do some things to work around it. This is the most common method that you will see used in most people's kitchens is that when they water bath, they're going to use a big pot, and that's what they're going to do. You don't have to go to Walmart and buy this special kit that says water bathing, canning pot with all the stuff. You don't have to do that. You can do that. It's all in one, and you can get the whole little canning kit and everything that comes with it. And it is super easy if you want to do that. And that pot's deep enough to get your jars in there and do fine with that. So if that's the way you want to go, feel free to do that. It's just not necessary. If you've got a big pot, I would recommend using your own pot, whatever you've got. There's no need in buying more materials. Now, if you want a pressure can, you will have to invest in a pressure canner. Right now, you can get the, I looked the other day, I can't remember. The 16 quart pressure canner, the Presto, is around $79, so not terribly bad. I did see one of these the other day, I think around $140, $150, which is really good because it got really high for a while, really high. So right now they come back down. Everything got super high when pandemic had everything shut down. Nobody was manufacturing anything. So they got in high demand because people were bored sitting at home trying to can some food. But anyway, so, but it's a lot of fun. You know, once you get to that stage where you're ready to like, okay, let's do some stuff. You guys sampled the chicken. Did everybody like the chicken?
Yeah, it was really good.
Okay.
Good.
So I did some grilled chicken on Monday or Tuesday. I don't know what the date is on there. What's the
Did you
date?
pressure cook those or did you waterboard those?
No, I pressured those in my All-American. So yeah, I did 7 jars in the All-American. I also have an electric pressure canner, that I use mostly just for leftovers. Like if I were going to do that soup, I would use my electric because it'll hold like four wide mouth jars or 5 regular mouth jars. I can either do the big ones or the smaller ones. So I use it sometimes too. But
Who makes that?
the electric one,
Uh-huh.
well, there's 2 electric ones out there. There's the Carry/Nesco. Nesco was bought out by Carry, or Carry was bought out by Nesco. I can't remember which one now. I did know that. But anyway, it's made by them. And it's not a 9 quart. Maybe it's a 7 quart. Anyway, if you just type in Carry or Nesco electric pressure canner.
They have them at Kohl's.
Yeah, they do have them at Kohl's. So you can pull
Really?
it up from there. Presto makes one now. They just came out with one. Presto is like the golden standard for canning in the United States, pretty much. There were some other brands that came out years ago, but Presto has kind of emerged in the last 50 years. It's been, one of the gold standards out there because they made pressure cookers that people are so familiar with. So they also do the pressure canners, like mine and many other people's. If you get into it enough where you're like gung-ho crazy about it, you can go for a really expensive model, which I do have one of the really expensive models, but not the super uber expensive models. Mine is more like, right here. But it's called All American. So you have the Presto 23 or 16 quart. You have the Presto Electric, which is a 9 quart, I believe. And then you have the Carry or Nesco Electric. And then you also have the All American, and there are several different sizes on the All American.
Now, because of the size of my family, I don't need all these big ones.
No,
I should just go with what you said, the 16 ounce, 16 quart.
16 quart, yeah.
This one there's a 6 quart one, which seems weird. I don't
Is
even
it a
know.
canner or a cooker?
Look at, see?
Yeah, it's a very common mistake. I'll show you my electric canner. My neighbor has a Presto canner, electric one, and she is going to come and join us when she can, and she's going to bring it. She's not even taking it out of the box yet because she's waiting for me to help her because she wants to get into it. But this is my electric. Mine is a Carry, so very, very simple.
Oh, Instapot.
This is probably the simplest
I like that.
to operate. It's very small. The lid is attached. You can take it off, but I don't recommend doing that because it's a pain to get back on. So it just literally, you turn it, then you turn it on exhaust, you do your process, you hit high, you set your time. You don't use any of this other stuff. That's for other things. You just use high and your time. And then you let it go for 10 minutes. It does a countdown. Then you flip your gauge to airtight, and then it'll count your time down.
And
Super
that's
simple.
the one that's now Nesco.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to dummy it down, if you were to can your soup that you made tonight, which one would you put it in?
Probably because it depends on how much it is, honestly. If I have like 5 jars, I would probably use this one. If I had more than 5, I would go for either this one or the All American, just whichever one.
How many can fit in there?
7 of the
Small.
7 of
Small.
this size. No, the big ones. Wherever
One
I
is
do.
down
Oh, it's
there?
in the pot, maybe?
Oh, in the pot. Yeah. So you can do 7 of these in any of these canners. Anything smaller, the shorter jars, you can stack those. So the cool thing about stacking it is, and you guys can look, I'll stack some of them in here and let you see how they're stacked. You can do one of 2 things. You can stack them in here using a rack. You can use any rack, it doesn't matter. And then just put another layer on top. Or you can offset them. I have done them before where I didn't use a rack at all. You just don't sit one directly on top of the other. They have to be able to kind of bubble and pop and breathe. Okay, so the basic principle of canning, how canning works, is, and because people think, I don't know what people think, I don't know, but I'm going to explain to it from a scientific perspective, right? So when you put things in the jar and they start getting heated up, there is air inside the jar on top of whatever your product is. That air gets super, super hot and starts to push its way out of the jar. The heat pushes it, it tightens it and pressures down on it, and it pushes air out of the jar. So once enough air gets pushed out of that jar, that lid then is sucked down really tight because the negative pressure inside the jar. So that's actually what causes your lid to seal.
When do you put the ring on there? Is the ring on it already?
The ring is on there in the jar.
Okay.
You don't over tighten it, and we'll talk about all that because we're going to actually go through it and can something Every time you guys are here probably from now on, we'll start canning stuff, and we'll either do a starting process or an ending process. With a water bath, we might do a water bath all the way through because they're shorter. When you're doing pressure canning, it takes a while because you have to bring it up and then you have to take it back down. So it can take a lot longer to do. But yeah, so what happens is in order for that to seal, that excess air has to escape. And so your lid is on there, the screw is on there, but it's not on there tight. It's basically just what they call fingertip tight. You use your fingertips, you set your jar on the table, and you tighten using just your fingertips, like 2 fingers. And when your jar spins, that's tight as you need. Then you put it in your jar. And then when the process is completely done, and you're completely, like 24 hours out, you will then take the rings off. You'll wash it really good, hot soapy water. You can even sit them down in a hot Suds sink with soapy water and wash your jars really, really good. Make sure there's no food on the outside of them. Make sure there's no excess water on the outside of them from the canning.
Now on your pressure cooker, you also fill it up with water?
You do.
Same
No.
thing, 2 inches up.
It's you only on the pressure canner. There are markers inside the pressure canner. You only use about this much water. It's 2 quarts. I think it's 2 quarts. I don't know. They're all a little different.
I believe you.
They all have little marks on them. I go by my demarcations. That's what I've been doing for years now. I don't even look at this anymore.
So those you
But
just
yeah.
put a little bit, both of those you put just a little bit of water.
Yeah. just
Whereas
a
this
little
one
bit.
you go 2 inches above your jars.
Yeah. Regular pot, I go way up. If you're water bathing something, and you'll see differences, like they talk about the differences in water bathing.
There's no pictures in there. How can I?
There's like there's 1 or 2 little pictures, not much, no. No, and my books are at the church. I'm sorry about that. And my
I'm
books
so
are at the
impressed
church.
you have a manual. I throw always throw them away.
Oh my gosh, no. I love my manuals.
I'm
a manual girl.
You too.
Yeah,
I'm a
I just
manual
use it,
girl.
but-
Yeah, so anyway, so yes, that's the basic thing. So if everything is done correctly, all the air pushes out and, or enough of the air pushes out so you get that negative pressure in there. If you are pressure canning something, meaning you're going for those longer times and that higher pressure, then it's going to be a stronger seal than if you water bath something. And so a lot of people would be like, I don't know if it was really sealed because I don't, like when you take something off of a pressure can jar, a really, really good pressure can jar, sometimes it'll like go kind of make that noise, right? Whereas if it's something you water bath, sometimes it's just barely pops off and it doesn't seem like, it's like, I don't know, was this sealed or not? It was. It's just that the water bathing process does not cause as much, because it's a shorter process for one thing, it does not cause as much air to get pushed out. So that's when things like your how much space you have in the jar above, what you cook. And they tell you head space on a lot of your recipes. Will tell you how much head space to use, meaning an inch of head space, leave an inch in the jar above your food. Basically, what's what that means. But it's really, really simple, and I want you guys to feel comfortable with it. So we are going to do some here. We're going to do some pressure canning. We're going to do some water bath canning. I'm probably not going to do any steam canning because I don't really do steam canning, even though it's basically like water bathing, but with less water, with the lid on. And I don't know. Anyway, it's basically kind of like that. You can do it with this one. Yeah, water bath steam. But yeah, anyway. You can do it.
One's not scary.
Okay, open kettle. You want to know what open kettle is?
That was my next question.
Okay, this is the one. A lot of people do this for pickles. Back in the day, a lot more people did it than do it currently. Pickles are very temperamental, meaning they won't get crisp, and a lot of people like really crisp pickles.
Yeah.
I don't care about super crisp pickle. I don't want them mushy, but I don't really care if they're crisp. But a lot of people really want crisp pickles. They like them to snap. So the only way pretty much you can get that is, they recommend a couple of different things to add to them, your grape leaves or a couple of alum or anyway. But the other way is to just do open kettle. Open kettle is basically, they cook their brine, they get their vegetables, they get whatever, their cucumbers, get them all sliced, put them in the jars, they cook their brine, get it really good and hot, pour it in the jar, put the lid on, turn it upside down. That's open kettle. You don't really do that with any other food
You
except
put the ring on it and everything?
everything, and just that's it. You let it seal. I don't do that because bacteria makes me nervous. I don't want bacteria in my food, even though it's extremely acidic, because obviously it's one of the most acidic things you can do is pickles. I just would rather not. So that's why I keep my pickles in the refrigerator when I open them, even though you don't have to technically. Technically you don't. Y'all remember we used to go to ball games and stuff and they'd serve pickles out of that big old thing and no, nobody ever refrigerated them. They don't have to be.
I don't
It's just-
refrigerate mine.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
Well,
A lot of people don't.
sometimes I do.
It's because they're
I do
very
too.
acidic.
I didn't
Most
know
things
that.
don't grow.
I thought they had to be in the fridge.
Yeah, well, I just am just like paranoid about everything.
I even
apparently.
like,
I just like them cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like them cold too.
I just
Yeah.
like them, period.
Yeah, so anyway, that's the basic 4 types. The only one I didn't really cover is the steam canning, obviously, but we'll go through because all of them have like these little bitty steps that, you know, it seems like a big deal, but it's really not. Okay, all right, thank you for coming. So long. All right, we'll see you next time. So, but we'll go through and you guys tell me what you want to tackle first. If you want to tackle pressure canning or if you want to tackle water bath, and y'all let me know. We can do it next time.
I want to do the electric one.
You want to do the electric one? Okay,
Yes,
we
I
can do
think
that.
I'm getting one of those for Christmas.
Those are super easy. Those are super
Same as what we did
easy.
you.
Yeah.
I'm canning burritos in a jar today. 14